Hello, everybody. My name is Val M. Tate, and our business ethics class, Ethical Decisions Making a Case. And this is BUS 416 at Martin University. Our case study today is on Uber, and it's entitled Uber Hits a Bump in the Road. And so so excited because we're going to be talking about Uber, which is this multi-billion-dollar company started less than 16 years ago. And Uber started as a tech startup offering ride sharing through a mobile app. And so we all have these mobile apps on our computers, PDAs, handheld devices, where we have these apps and they can do wonderful and marvelous things. And one of them is this ride sharing app called Uber. It grew quickly, operating in 420 plus cities across 70 countries. Can you imagine 70 countries across this world? You can go there and download that app and get a ride share. It became one of the world's most valuable startups, but growth brought major ethical and legal challenges. And we're going to get into some of those major ethical and legal challenges, such as driver's classification and pay. So we're going to get more into that, and we're going to get more into the corporate culture, as well as legal and global challenges, business ethics concerns. We're going to take a look at risk areas and lessons. And of course, we're going to look at a major question. Okay. With that said, some of the key issues around Uber were this driver's classification and pay. So Uber treats its drivers as independent contractors, not employees. And so that whole thing around, and that was kind of new, right? All that whole thing around that is having people on the road day to day. They are connected to this app, but they're connected as contractors. They're not connected as employees. They're W-9 people, the consultants almost, right? They're W-9 and not W-2s. That means a whole lot of tax concerns, whole lot of benefit concerns, things around its workers' comp and all those kinds of things. This really, though, saved the company tons, probably billions of dollars money, but limits the benefits and protections of the drivers. So can you imagine going around driving for some company and you don't have any protections, you know, liability. So many of those drivers really protested the low pay and unfair rules tied to the app's rating system. And so there could be someone in your car, your personal vehicle that belongs to you. You pick them up based on the app, and they have something not so pleasant to say about you. Well, Uber was giving whatever those pickups were, the customer, they were listening to those customers and they were basing the driver's compensation on whether they got a good rating or not. So can you imagine it, even if whatever the person was saying was not true, but it could be either way. They were saying something or not something at all, and they were basing their pay on that. So it could be a dynamic situation to be in. And many of the drivers actually protested this low pay and unfair rules tied to this app rating system. And then in 2015, California ruling found drivers should be classified as an employee. Can you imagine? Um, California has the highest GDP in the world, right? They have higher than many countries, just the city alone. And they were classifying Uber drivers as employees. They thought that they should be classified employees, which has a whole different ramification on Uber itself as a company. Some other key issues are involved is around corporate culture. Uber's leadership under Travis Kalanick was seen as aggressive and toxic. And so you had people speaking out about that. So there were reports of sexual harassment, discrimination, poor ethics, damage, and all these things really damaged the company's reputation. So here you are, a 16-year-old company or however many age company at that time, and you can't afford that kind of poor press. And you cannot afford those kind of accusations. You could go out of business really quickly and lose your status, especially if there were other people come alongside you doing a similar work. And this was so toxic, such that the Kalanick resigned. He actually got up out of here, okay? Got up out of there. And Uber itself began to diversify, began diversity training, rather. And they fired problem employees and hired a new chief diversity officer. So these are again some of the things that the key issues, as well as what they decided to do in regards to what was going on in the company at that time. Some of the things had to do also with the legal and global challenges. So there was some legal and global. So imagine 425 plus um, pieces out there in over 70 countries, right? So you got a lot of global business out there. And so they faced bans and lawsuits in France, uh, India, Germany, all of these for using unlicensed drivers. Okay, so Uber went to other countries and didn't abide by their rules and laws. Okay, and so as a result of that, they faced bans and lawsuits for that. In India, a passenger assault led Uber to add panic buttons and and tracking features. So they had people being assaulted, you know, passenger assault. Okay, and then critics also question how responsible Uber is for driver safety and behavior. So those kind of things were going on. Those are kind of the challenges. And as a global 70 country um, organization, business, they are global. And so they really have to be on top of those types of challenges where passenger and the general public is it has a safety concerns. Some of the business ethic concerns, and I'm sure that you have any, I know I have at times witnessed personally these surge pricing. So during high demand times, you can get a surge price. So they've drew criticism for price, so-called price gouging. And then there again, I can recall going to the airport at certain times of day or getting off airplane at certain times, and all of a sudden, I would be it would be $20 to get home, and then by the time I get off the plane from coming in, by the time that plane get to the gate, it's $50. So being connected to the data that draws um, the surge in pricing so that they would know it's time to price gouge at that time. Also, taxi industries accused Uber of avoiding fair licenses and regulations. So, can you imagine as a taxi driver? Taxi drivers really go through a lot to get their licenses and to maintain them, and oftentimes uh, they have they're a business of their own. They have so many things that they have to hurdle through to become licensed and so many regulations to attend to. Well, those didn't, that the Uber drivers didn't have to attend to those rules, licenses, and regulations. And so many a times I saw where some taxi drivers passed that taxi license down to family members to have. Well, guess what? Uber drivers came along, and a lot of them they became almost obsolete. I hardly ever see a taxi on the street now. I do see them, but they are far few between in regards to Ubers. There's no telling when an Uber might come on board and uh, hook up to the network and pick up a ride, right? As opposed to a taxi driver. I can't even tell you what the taxi phone number is. So if I was going to call a taxi, I wouldn't know how to do it. So again, and the last but not least, I want to look at Uber also faced lawsuits over misleading safety claims in advertising, and so those are kinds of things of business ethic concerns rather that Uber had to look through. Also, there were risks. So drivers' relations. So there were protests and low morale and lawsuits. So can you imagine the low having a low morale and lawsuits in regards to driver relations, being a driver, and someone robs you, or someone uses foul language or gets in your car. So all those kinds of things, gets in your car and does something that they're not supposed to be doing. So lawsuits flourished during this time and protests. Okay. Also, there were competition. There were other competition, other services like Lyft and Ola, rising. There were rising fast in the industry, and there was others that are rising fast in the industry in regards to this. Customer satisfaction, long waits. I remember there was used to be long waits, not as long as a taxi, but used to be inexperience and safety concerns. There were people who didn't speak the language of the land or where people were, or folks coming in, and there was customer satisfaction along those lines. Also, technology, data security, data security, and future of autonomous cars. Now, when I think of that future of autonomous cars, I really see a risk for. Um, this wasn't in my research, but just imagining it out. If they did do these autonomous cars, right? They still would have to be. They would have to gain a lot of autonomous cars, a lot of cars that self-driving cars themselves, right? So I can't really see them doing that, putting all those cars on the street and being responsible for them. I still see them. Um, I don't know the ins and outs of Uber, but that to me that's a risk. The other thing to me would be a risk would be why would I get an Uber when I could buy my own autonomous car, right? Most times I use Uber. I might use it to if I'm going downtown. I don't really live that far from downtown. Maybe 5-10 minute drive in traffic. Right. If I'm going down there to a show or to something concerning work or whatever, I have my own autonomous car. I just get in the back of my car and sit on the other side or whatever, drive me down there, and I say, hey, plug in the data to say, hey, come back in 30 minutes to pick me up. That way I don't have to pay for parking. How about that? So I can see that there's a real true risk for autonomous cars. In conclusion, you guys, Uber has changed how people travel, but must balance innovation with ethical responsibilities. You can't be doing any everything to people. You have to follow the rules and those kind of things. Its future depends on stronger driver protections, as well as fair pricing, global compliance, and a positive culture. We need to make sure that those things happen, and Uber does. Ethical leadership and trust will determine whether Uber continues to lead or face more bumps in the road. So, with that said, my question is, and this is a question that I asked myself, would you or do you ride with Uber and why? And if you do, would you continue to ride with them and why? Would you or do you ride with Uber and why? And would you continue to ride with them? And that for me is a major question because it really, to me, it's about what do I do? How do I do it? Do I think it's safe enough? I think one thing I would not drive for Uber. I don't see it as a safe thing. Everybody has their own story. I have my own story regarding that and safety from my family member perspective. And I don't think there's um, that enough safety rules and regulations for rideshare for me to want to drive in regards to that. Just some real general other questions, more questions to consider would be accountability and technology, questions around that, such as when a company uses technology to connect people, who should be held accountable when something goes wrong with the company? The driver or the company, both who? Around public trust. How can a company like Uber regain public trust after facing scandals and lawsuit? And then the global responsibility. Under Uber operates in dozens of countries with different laws and cultures. Should a company adapt to the ethics to local standards or follow one global standard everywhere it operates? So there's a lot of questions considering regarding Uber. And so again, this has been Val, and I thank you guys for listening to my case study. This is BUS 416, a case study. Uber hits a bump in the road with Val Tate. Thank you, and you have a blessed day.